I'm the Assistant Project Director in the IdahoEPSCoR office. Thank you for joining the conversation and brainstorming discussion about Idaho's potential directions for our next NSF EPSCoR Track-1 Research Infrastructure Improvement Award. I'm just going to facilitate some of the discussion later on, but right now I'll turn it over to Andy Kliske, our IdahoEPSCoR Director. Andy?
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, welcome to you all. Thank you for making the time this morning to participate in this brainstorming session. We're really excited to sort of be sharing where we're at in the Track-1 NSF EPSCoR process for developing our next proposal. What I'd like to do is give just a very brief recap on the NSF EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Improvement Track-1 program. A number of you are familiar with it, others are not. So I'll just do that briefly. We would like to provide sort of an update from the last part of the process, which was a couple of listening sessions at the end of March and the beginning of April. So we'll provide sort of an overview of some of the ideas that came from those listening sessions. I'll then just talk briefly about the process and timeline that we're using, where we are at the moment and what is to come in this process of developing a theme area and then a proposal ultimately. And then I'll introduce the current draft theme area that we're looking at, that the Executive Committee for EPSCoR, Executive Committee of the Idaho State Committee has developed so far. That has been pushed down as a description document, so a number of you will hopefully have read that. And then we'll open it up to a brainstorming discussion and hear from you, and that hopefully will occupy most of the time this morning. So just a little recap, EPSCoR, that's the established program to stimulate competitive research, which actually has renditions in 6 different federal agencies: National Institutes of Health, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, the NASA has its own program, USDA, NIFA, and NSF has its program, which is what our focus is here today. The purpose of the Track-1 program is to provide sustainable improvements in a jurisdiction's research infrastructure, academic research infrastructure, principally to increase research capacity and competitiveness of the state or jurisdiction. So for us, that's enhancing Idaho's research capacity and competitiveness across the state. And the program does that by improving the capacity in areas of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, research and education, areas supported by the NSF, but importantly aligned with with Idaho's science and technology priorities. And that's governed by sort of the messages and strategies that come from the State Board of Education and the Higher Education Research Committee as set out in the Science and Technology Plan for Idaho. The objectives for Track-1 are to build academic research infrastructure of the state of Idaho in this case, building regional, national, international recognition for project participants and organizations, so both the research institutions, our research universities, Boise State University, Idaho State University, University of Idaho. Also our primarily undergraduate institutions, the colleges across Idaho, and our research partners, stakeholders, and rights holders as well. In particular, adding value to existing institutional priorities. So we really look to leverage existing efforts and efforts that sort of look to be coming down the track, and to catalyze new initiatives that have the ability to develop from priorities and commitments made at Idaho's universities and other institutions. The At the listening sessions last month, about a month ago, I went into sort of more detail about Track-1 and the priorities that come into play. So I sort of recommend that you take a look at that presentation. The recording of it is available on the IdahoEPSCoR website. But we did hold at that sort of a listening session after I'd spoken, and a number of things came up, and I'm just going to put the ones that I've recorded, and it's not necessarily exhaustive, and these don't necessarily indicate directions that we're going, but it was valuable input that we had. Some of the ideas included the importance of biotech for rural communities, so the importance of developing a program that supports interest in rural communities to enhance the ability for students, high school students from those communities to sort of more actively pursue university degrees. The Internet of Things environmental monitoring, and an example there was things like precision ag, resilience related to bioprocesses or future industry.
I'm sure you'd be able to find the podcast.
If you can just mute, please, thank you. Cybersecurity in some form, eco-friendly materials and processes. This relates to advanced manufacturing, which is one of the OSTP, Office of Science, Technology and Policy directives and interests. Rural and clean energy. The idea of resilient infrastructure was mentioned. The idea of geohealth, environmental and other risks in rural and underserved communities. Bridging the rural divide for STEM in Idaho. Better serving Latinx and also Native American communities and people in Idaho, and leveraging remote learning anywhere in Idaho, this idea of connectivity, which has been signaled by the current, recently new NSF director, Dr. Panachanthan. This is one of the areas that he's mentioned in recent discussions that he has had. So those are just a sprinkling of ideas that came up at the listening sessions, and we've certainly been looking at those and their relevance to what we develop. The process that we're pursuing, the sort of the timeline, our submission date will be August of next year. We won't know the exact date until May of next year when the solicitation is released, but typically we've been on a pattern the last couple of years of a sort of an early August deadline. So that's currently what we're planning for. This first phase of the development process is the strategic SWOT analysis that we've been undertaking, that the executive committee has been working through, leading to the selection of a theme area, a broad theme area, not a proposal or a research topic, but a broad theme area. And most recently we had listening sessions yesterday and now today, these brainstorming sessions to engage with you some more. And during this month, by the end of this month of May, we hope to have finalized the theme area within which to then request some targeted research innovation briefs. And so that second phase will take place over the summer. Development of proposal broad topics and institutional lead by potential institutional leads. So we are anticipating holding a workshop in early June for invited senior researchers, which will be putting a charge to develop research innovation briefs. Those hopefully will be prepared through the summer between June and August, submitted in early August. They'll undergo merit review, and then the executive committee and the state EPSCoR committee will then review and approve the particular research topic that is pursued, which will include the overarching research question or questions, particular hypotheses, the core intellectual merit, and institutional leads for the topic area which then leads to the beginning of the development of a proposal. For this phase, these invited papers, the criteria for eligibility that the Executive Committee, VPRs and Chair and Co-Chair of the State Committee have agreed on is that be senior researchers, tenured associate or full professors, people who have received NSF research awards in the last 5 years and a willingness to participate in the summer process of drafting, writing research innovation briefs, which are 4-page briefs, setting out core intellectual merit, a research question or questions, hypotheses, and then that's this kind of current phase that we're looking to develop next. And then that will lead us into the fall of this year and through fall and spring of next year, then the drafting of the first full draft of the Track-1 proposal, and that also will entail building out the team, the proposal team, quite a bit more, including engagement of early career and junior faculty. And then sort of at the end of the spring, that draft will undergo external review, and then into the summer, sort of the review, rewriting, sort of a second full draft and completion of all of the elements that go into a Track-1 proposal, which are not only the research plan, that's kind of a core of it, but also workforce development, education plans, cyber infrastructure, and other associated parts of the budget, and so forth. So that's the process that we're currently on track with. And the theme area that, and I'm calling this a draft theme area because it's not been finalized, and today is part of the sort of process of, hopefully helping us and the ability for you to contribute to the fine tuning and revision of the theme area that we go with. But the Executive Committee have crafted a theme area for the next IdahoEPSCoR RII Track-1 that will develop hypothesis-driven research, education, and workforce development that's related to the theme of innovation pathways for resilience of natural resources and critical infrastructure. It's a broad umbrella for a research topic to be identified and developed in. It's not the research topic itself. It is particularly broad. It provides the bounds, if you like, the bookends for within which to develop more nuanced, overarching research questions and hypotheses, and allows for a narrowing in on innovative research directions. Some specific elements that sort of come about in this draft theme area of pathways for resilience of natural resources and critical infrastructure are so what we mean by resilience. And so resilience for this theme is viewed from a proactive perspective as the ability of social ecological systems to maintain functionality or diversity of future options and adapt to dynamics under both catastrophic and chronic change. Catastrophic changes could include natural and human disasters, for example, wildland fire, cybersecurity threats potentially, while chronic changes could include prolonged drought under climate change, as one example. Infrastructure refers to critical infrastructure sectors that could include dams, energy and electrical systems, food and agricultural systems, and water systems. Natural resources, of course, is broad, but is important to Idaho, and could include, either be restricted to or include energy, water, and food and agricultural systems. By resilience, we're really focusing on the resilience of one or more natural resource systems and their supporting infrastructure to either catastrophic and or chronic change. We anticipate that the that this is an area suited to transdisciplinary approaches, which has been a strength of Idaho EPSCoR research, the ability to work across multiple disciplines, multiple areas. We're certainly conscious of the strength of geosciences and biological sciences in Idaho, and this can support the continued expertise and growth there, but also allow us to grow in areas for which there are opportunities, but perhaps less strength, computational sciences, math and physical sciences, for example, and we have long-standing expertise in social sciences. We anticipate that approaches to this could include computational modeling, could include futures analysis, could be well suited to machine learning and AI, which is an area of national priority, both at NSF and through the White House OSTP in some of their recent 2020 documentation. The breadth of approaches we expect to be inclusive of both urban and rural areas. We're a sort of a rapidly changing demography in Idaho, and we certainly need, want to be able to support our rural community ability to engage in science, whilst also acknowledging the growth of urban areas. Workforce development and education programs are expected to enhance participation from Idaho's rural communities, from our tribal and Indigenous communities and governments, and support improved learning everywhere. So this idea of connectivity across the state, and if possible, explore opportunities for advanced manufacturing related to the particular theme area if it's appropriate and makes sense. So this is a draft theme area. It is clearly quite broad, and we still have some work to do to sort of, winnow it down to something that allows the development of some really strong research innovation briefs for the second phase. We have pushed this description out for external review, and some of the comments that we've received are the need to be focused, more focused, which is quite reasonable. It is broad open external review. The need to articulate novelty in the science developed. Can I just ask everyone to make sure you're muted? I can hear some background noise there. And the need for clearer alignment with future NSF and federal emerging areas. The current NSF budget that is in play, and that includes a significant potentially significant plussage, and the areas that might be supporting, the strategies coming out of the White House Office of Science, Technology and Policy, the American Jobs Plan that is in development. There's a lot of new potential direction at the federal level that we kind of need to probably give some clearer indication of how we give adherence to those. And then some suggestions from our external reviewers to identify critical challenges or problem statements, and we can explore some of that today. Using the state of Idaho as a living laboratory to explore, to use it for exploring the scientific questions that would be at the core of the proposal, and leveraging some of our existing assets, and then identifying a few priority areas or sectors with economic impact and focus on those. So that's sort of very broad brush overview of the external review that we've had on this draft theme area. We're, as I said, in the process sort of timeline slide, we're hoping to advance to a clearer, more defined theme area by the end of this month, so that we can proceed into the drafting of research innovation briefs, these 4-page documents, through the summer. With that, I'm going to stop talking here and open up for, first of all, for questions, and then we'll move into a discussion period. So for questions, it's really, if you have questions about clarity in anything I've said, about timeline, about process, specific questions. If you've got ideas or comments on the theme area, let's hold that, and that will consume kind of the discussion period. So first of all, any questions and comments. Some ground rules. Please be brief. We have quite a number of people on, so in this first part, if you have a question, let's hear what it is. When we come to the discussion period, try and keep your comments to 1 to 2 minutes so that we can get through as many people as possible. Please be respectful of other ideas and comments that you hear, and just recognize that this is, we're developing this as a collective process for the state of Idaho, using the One Idaho concept that all of our institutions come together for collective goods. So, if you're putting an idea out there, then put it, we welcome those, but put them out there knowing that it's in the collective environment here, that we're all listening and interested in those ideas. I'm going to ask Rick here to just facilitate questions. Use the raise hands if you do have anything, and feel free to use the chat function.
Thanks, Andy. Again, so I'm monitoring the participant raised hands. If you have questions and would like to raise your hand, I will call on people. We do have a question in the chat, a couple of them related. The question is, who are expected to join the proposal? Only associate or full professors? Also the NSF awardees in the past 5 years? There's a comment about limiting the past awardees being fair or not. And then the other question is related to this. What's the rationale for NSF awards in the past 5 years? Many of our most productive scholars aren't necessarily receiving NSF awards.
Sure. And the executive committee, discussed this, and the intent is, for this next process to be more targeted than in the past. Each jurisdiction, handles this process in different ways, and for those of you that have been involved in previous Track-1 development processes leading up to GM3, in the case of the miles before that, there typically was a just completely open white paper session for everyone and everyone, and we've decided to be much more targeted so that a lot of people do not consume a lot of time that does not see the light of day. We want it to be more targeted. The Track-1 is not a straight out research proposal. Research is at the core of it, but it is a workforce development and education program which is focused on enhancing our competitiveness, particularly, not only, but particularly at NSF, increasing our ability to attract greater funding through NSF. And so the leads do need to have an awareness and strength in the NSF enterprise. And so for this next phase, that is why we have gone with eligibility criteria. We also, there are a number of ways we could do this, and that is one way. It doesn't mean that people are restricted who don't fit those criteria from being engaged partway in that process or being engaged in the proposal development. So that is purely for the development of these initial 4-page research innovation briefs. The people who are willing and invited to take part in that process could develop those working with other people who don't fit those eligibility criteria. But the lead on each research innovation brief does need to fit those criteria. and then out beyond the second phase, this development of 4-page briefs, as we move into the development of the proposal itself and the proposal team, those same criteria do not hold. And we'll be looking for breadth across institutions. We'll be looking for diversity in a number of areas, including from senior researchers to junior researchers, early career researchers. So that's not meant to be exclusive of the entire process. It's really meant to help us to sort of develop into this next phase in a more targeted way.
Thanks, Andy. So we do have another question in the chat, but based on the order of question, I'd like to call on Brian. Is it Wampler?
Yeah, that was my question. Which was touched on a little bit by Andy. I think he explained it. I think I was worried about this limiting factor of having an NSF in the last 5 years. I mean, I understand the need to have the expertise, the need to sort of have people who sort of know sort of what the game is and how to play the game. But my worry is that is going to limit, for example, people in the social sciences where the funding tends to be much lower in the NSFs, and you may have people from other sorts of funding. So I just wonder whether that criteria, the eligibility could be expanded to include something along the lines of people who've received, federal funding or who've been, sort of involved. Because I worry that it's cutting off voices and really good scholars and academics prior to at the starting point. And I think the starting point should be at the point where it's sort of broad and inclusive to then sort of be able to move ideas forward through the process.
Andy, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your comment, and I appreciate that. I mean, we are trying to develop a process overall that is inclusive, and even if this next phase that we're coming to is targeted and would potentially cut some people out, the decision on who will be invited, we're using those criteria as kind of the starting point, but ultimately each VPR will decide from who from their campus participates in this process. And I mean, I certainly recognize that there are people who have competitive records and could contribute who don't happen to have an NSF award. And given the sort of topic area, well, not the topic area, but the broad theme area, there quite conceivably could be someone who has competitive research funding, through USDA NIFA or through DOE, that could be quite relevant. So, yeah, I think, we can certainly look at that, but what we're trying to do is to have a process that is not, as I said, that doesn't open up for everything and everything. That's a manageable process. We did decide that we in part wanted to keep this to tenured associate and full professors, because it also is a process of identifying the institutional leads, and sensibly they do need to be tenured and senior researchers to be able to undertake the duties associated with that. People are not constrained from being involved in team development of the research innovation briefs. So the people that are charged with developing those can certainly reach out and engage with other folks as well.
Andy, we have another question in the chat. It is, at what point in the team will the team be soliciting input about the workforce development, education, and diversity plans?
Yeah, so I think those will likely be developed during the development of the actual proposal. So that would come in the, if you like, the third phase, and heavily in the fourth phase. This next 4-page research innovation brief development needs to have cognizance to those, so that the proposal topics, the research areas, questions, and hypotheses are amenable to those. But I would see those as coming down. We're not asking for those to be developed at this stage. Those will come in the proposal development writing itself.
Okay, so we do have a couple other notes in the chat. I believe from listening to Andy's response that many of those questions have been answered. And so I think probably you're all available to read the chat comments if they're simply comments. At this point, I think we should transition to our discussion of the stated draft theme and transition to the brainstorming part of the conversation. Andy, would you like to introduce the objective of the brainstorming?
Sure, thank you. So